This will be considered a living room, and that's the floor. I have a 4-bedroom house, and I'm not really able to utilize any of them. I have a bathroom that I can use. It's probably the cleanest thing in my house. Ironically, this is my little path to my bed. I have no place to sit in my house other than on my bed. This is my world, this little bed right here. Besides my house, I have also a 3-car garage that is completely full. I make extra money selling scrap metal, copper, brass, steel, and then my tools are still all in here. I tend to make a mess when I take things apart. I feel like we are a throwaway world, and I just hate to see things going in our dump all the time. This is a mattress that my mom slept on when she was here, and I just didn't have the heart to get rid of it. A lot of my things in my house hold sentimental value. I don't know how to let go, and a lot of this is clothes, and I don't have any idea what's underneath the clothes. I don't consider myself a hoarder. I would describe myself as somebody that likes to keep memories and things that I might need in the future. I've been hiding the fact that my house is cluttered for 20 years, but I'm willing to risk telling the world about it to make the relationship with my daughter better. My daughter is 23 years old, and I raised her as a single mom. By the time Shayla was 10, the floor was covered. Shayla started expressing the house issue when she was in her mid-teens, around 2019. Shayla began to get very upset about the state of the house because it's a chore just to walk from her room to the kitchen, maneuvering around everything. I'll turn the light on. She would trip on something, then that would bring out her frustration and her anger, and she would just, I can't stand this house. She would stay in her room and not want to come out. She complained about the house. She just kept going on and on and on, complaining about how messy it was. And I said, well, if you don't like it, then you can leave. She moved out because she just couldn't tolerate my messiness anymore. Shayla hasn't gotten all of her stuff out yet. Some of it's hers, some of it's mine. There was a huge rift in our relationship. It just broke my heart. Shayla is very resentful that I have let the house get like that. I feel like I have chosen things over her, but it's not intentional. I can't help myself.
Jackie, how are you?
Fine, sir. How are you?
Are you glad to be here?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'm very, very nervous, but I know that I need to be here because I am fighting for my life at this point.
You're a walking contradiction to me. I admire your determination in getting here. So hats off to you for that. The determination you've shown in getting here suggests to me that you can take that determination going forward, and we can do great things, depending on what it is you want to do. You can't change what you don't acknowledge, and that's where I'm confused. I listened to your first tape piece, and you were saying, you were basically justifying and defending what you're doing. So which is it? You said in your second tape piece, you said, I can't help myself. I did choose things over my daughter, but it wasn't intentional. I can't help myself. That suggests to me that you think you're out of control. Which is it? You're just a sentimental gal that hangs on to things that you are attached to, or you're out of control and chose things over the most important person on the face of the earth.
I am out of control.
So you are a hoarder.
Yes. It took a long time for me to admit that. I was in denial for a long time. I just kind of gave up. At some point in my life, it just got the best of me and was too much for me to do by myself.
Do you have mice in the house?
Yes.
But yet you were prepared to defend this and embrace this over your daughter. You brought some things.
I did.
That you have hung on to, that you saw value in. I mean, it was worth it was worth hanging on to. I want to see what your thinking about this is. So you can open that up, and I'll get my gloves on here.
That goes to something in the house. I just haven't figured out what it is yet.
I'm sure it does.
This clock was my sister's that passed away in 94.
Does it work?
No,
It doesn't work.
it does not work.
So what is this?
It's a little basket that Shayla used like a little purse, and I remember her carrying it around and the cute little things she carried in it.
So these are some items that if you organize these in a way where you had mementos, you could save these things. But let's take a look at what you have these embedded in. Look where you've got this stuff. I mean, if you value this stuff, look where this is trash.
Yes.
If this is something from Shayla that you really valued, you wouldn't embed this stuff in this kind. I mean, mice can eat it. This has got mold. Look at this. It's absolutely uninhabitable. Do you see it? When you look at it on the big screen, you see it every day and you don't look at it. But look at it. This is where you're supposed to eat.
Yes.
How does that look to you?
Looks horrible.
Is that something, that's your kitchen counter?
Yes.
So Shayla moves out and you go, I don't know why she would not want to be here. Would you want a child to be there?
No.
If Child Protective Services came, if Department of Child and Family Services came and saw this, they would remove any child from here.
Yes.
You were a police officer.
Yes.
You would remove a child from here if you came and found him in that, right?
Yes.
Because you would think this was child abuse by neglect.
Yes.
So you acknowledge that now. You're saying, how do I stop?
Exactly.
Okay. The question is have a seat, is this serving a purpose for you? And people don't do things repeatedly if they don't serve a purpose. Now, the question is, what purpose?
When I watch hoarding shows, I don't think I'm like those people. Real hoarders to me collect like old butter bowls or newspapers. They don't want to throw any out. A lot of them I've noticed have stuff stacked almost to the ceiling. A hoarder to me doesn't want to let anything go. I let things go, but I collect more than I let go, unfortunately.
I don't remember my house ever being clean. By the time I was around 12, I had to be put on medication for depression. My house caused a lot of anger and emotions inside of me. I try to help my mom clean. Back when I lived there, these things can be broken, they can be actual trash, and she would end up bringing them back in the house. I would try all night long before I had to go to bed to clean. I felt like I failed because I didn't even make a dent. Occasionally, I would get angry at my mom for the house. Then in July of 2019, my mom kicked me out of the house. She did not give me a reason. We didn't have a big fight or anything. She just texted me that I have a 30-day notice.
All I said was, if you don't like it here, you can leave. I don't ever remember telling her she had 30 days.
After my mom texted me, she didn't really talk to me. She ignored me. Every time I would text her, she would read the messages and never reply.
I never did want her to leave, so I don't know where the miscommunication came from.
The moment my mom kicked me out, we instantly split up. How could she love me? How could she do this to me? And not ever getting that closure of having that answer really just separated us.
Well, joining us virtually is Jackie's daughter, Shayla. Shayla, hello.
Hey.
Well, one of the things I've been focusing on with your mother is whether or not she's here to justify and defend the way she lives or acknowledge and change the way she's living. And your answer to that, Jackie, is what?
I am not trying to defend it at all.
So you're here to acknowledge
I'm here
it
to
and
acknowledge
change it.
and change it, yes. I wouldn't have fought so hard to get here if I wasn't ready to acknowledge and defend, or not to defend it, but acknowledge and change it.
So you agree that you are a hoarder and that your house is unlivable.
Absolutely.
It's full of mice, it's unhygienic, and no one could or should be living there.
Absolutely.
And certainly you couldn't expect your daughter to live there now or then. And Shayla, you say that the stress and anxiety is through the roof because of the house, and you became a neat freak because of it. The pendulum swung the other way with you, and you live completely differently.
Yeah, I tend to keep my house pretty neat because I don't want it to get the way my mom's is, and I don't judge her for that, but it's not a lifestyle that I want to have.
But you do recognize that the way she's living is pathological. It's not normal to live that way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't think that it's normal. I knew growing up from a young age that it was not normal, and I did everything I could to try to fix the house myself, but it became something that was out of my power to do.
Well, clean up would be like spitting in the ocean. There's no way. It's a tidal wave. You can't do anything about it. I assume you just never had anybody over.
Yeah, I was never allowed to have anybody over, both for my sanity and hers. We were both embarrassed by it. And I do feel like that created a lot of social anxiety in me today.
And how do you feel about your relationship with your mother now?
We were closer at one time. I do know that she doesn't like our relationship. She wishes that we were closer.
What do you want to see happen with her?
I want her happy. I mean, she's had friends that have told her, "Oh, you never smile, you never laugh," and she just kind of blows it off like, "Yeah, I don't do that." And I want her to laugh. I want her to smile and be happy and enjoy hanging out with people for fun, not just because she feels like she has to.
My mom tends to guilt trip me a lot. A few days ago, my mom was guilt tripping me into meeting Dr. Phil in person. She basically told me that she wasn't gonna live if I don't help her. It was causing a lot of anxiety attacks. I can't breathe, I'm crying. I literally shut down. I do want to help her, but she doesn't really care about my feelings. It was in the moment all her.
I was a police officer for 13 years. I was really good at it. I genuinely cared for kids and people. That was the happiest I'd ever been, second to the fact of having my daughter. But one day, we were at the shooting range going from a .357 type gun to a 9mm. They had 2 rows of targets. So when the officer next to me shot through his target from 3 feet away, it hit the second row of targets. They were metal, so when the bullet hit that metal, it ricocheted back and got me in my head. It penetrated my skin and went to my skull. Didn't go in my skull, just hit it. There was some confusion how bad I was hurt, and so I went ahead and retired. Luckily, other than a little pain that I still have when I push on it, I was okay. After I retired from the police department, Shayla came along and things were okay for a while, and then she started school, and then I'm twiddling my thumbs like, what do I do now? That's when I started collecting and fixing things out of boredom. Now, living in my home makes me feel like a worthless human being because I don't understand how I would let something like this happen, especially knowing how badly it hurts my family members.
You knew when Shayla left that it was hurting her.
Yes.
And you're hearing her now, and she's not telling you anything new when she says, social anxiety and not having developed the skills that you normally develop when you're growing up and having friends over and things of that nature, that she lived with shame and guilt and hiding out. And you made a decision, a choice, not to deal with it, correct?
Somewhat. I I think I had blinders on. I didn't see the worst of it. I didn't see how badly I was hurting her at the time.
And Shayla, what would she say to you when you said, Mom, come on, this is crazy. We can't live like this.
She, in a way, would kind of make excuses, but I would tell her, like, hey, I'm trying to clean this up. I need to throw this stuff away. And a lot of it she wouldn't let me throw away. I would throw things away, and she would get in the trash can outside and pull them out. And I kind of felt like it was worthless for me to be helping in a way,
Here's what I want both of you to understand, and there's a reason I'm talking about this, because I've kind of put your life together in kind of stepping stones across a raging river here, because I ask myself, why would someone do this? And we know that hoarders suffer from anxiety. We know that depression is often part of what's involved in that. And so I look and say, why would you specifically do this? And I've looked at your longitudinal history, and I know that when you were 4 years old, you were abused.
Yes, as
You
far
were
back as
beaten.
I can remember.
You were beaten and starved and bullied. You went into foster care, and you were abused more then and
Yes.
physically beaten.
Yes,
But you got out of foster care and you went back with your dad.
yes,
And then you've been in a number of relationships that were abusive.
yes,
At age 35, your sister died. From 42 to 44, you were diagnosed with breast cancer and had your colon removed.
yes,
And at 44, you began hoarding.
When I'm inside my house, all curtains are closed. If I have blinds, they're all pulled down. Shayla is the only one I will allow inside my house. It is my dream to one day host a craft party or a quilting group and have my time to shine like that. This is all my crafts, and I just need to organize. But right now, I can't have anybody coming in.
There's two things that I see as goals here. Number one is, I think it's important that you deal with psychological problems psychologically. You deal with medical problems medically. And you've been dealing with psychological problems environmentally, materially. Based on your life history here, I don't ask myself why you're anxious or depressed. The world has not been a nurturing, soft place to fall for you. And it isn't for anybody. I mean, there's always bumps in the road. Life is not a success-only journey, but there ought to be a better ride than you've had. And so you've reacted to it in a very realistic way. It's hurt you, and so you've recoiled. And one thing that hoarders tell me an awful lot is, I feel like I'm in control of some stuff. It's like, if I can keep this, and I can keep this, and I can keep this, I feel like I'm in control of this stuff right here. And so I at least feel like I have a sense of control of some things. Now, that's a false sense of control, but at least it gives you a sense that, like, I've gathered this stuff up and I have some control here. You've had no sustained program to alleviate these problems and this pain in your life, and so you've dealt with it the way that you have. And that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Right? It doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all.
It gives you a short high for a few seconds, but you have to deal with your psychological problems. You have to say that this doesn't do it. I realize I've suffered, I have open wounds from childhood, adolescence, adulthood. I have open wounds. I need to deal with those. And if I do, I won't have the need for any of this. And if you do that, then wow, you're going to go, it's funny, all of a sudden, I don't need this stuff. And you need to let go of the guilt. You say you need Shayla to forgive you.
I do.
I have the feeling that Shayla is way ahead of you. Shayla, talk to us here.
I do forgive her. I mean, I think she's very brave for putting herself out there and trying to get help. Not anybody could just do that. I wouldn't have the strength to do that. I mean, you see, I can't be there. I didn't have the strength to, but I'm very lucky that I have a strong mom that is able to do that.
Well, tell her that. She's looking at you right now. Tell her that.
I forgive you and I love you. I'm sorry that you're having to go through this.
I love you, Shayla. Thank you for forgiving me. She's wonderful, isn't she? The best thing that ever happened in my life.
Well, you've obviously done some right things because you have a beautiful and empathetic young woman there as a daughter. And you have to be willing to forgive yourself, take the help, and move on.
I want to learn to forgive myself, but right now I can't.
I understand. And you said it right. You want to learn to forgive yourself. And you do that by climbing out of this depression, climbing out of this filth, climbing out of all of this.
Noah has been my best friend for almost 3 years now. One time, my mom had something that needed picked up, so myself and Noah drove over there to get it, and I felt really anxious having him in the car just because it was the first time that he was ever going to see the outside of my mom's house. I didn't want him to see that side of how I lived. If Noah or anyone else sees the inside of my house, I do feel scared that they'll judge me and not want to be in my life anymore.
Now, 3 years ago, I met Tracy, who asked for my help to confront her 71-year-old hoarder mom who was facing eviction.
My mom's house is vile. She has a very hard time throwing things away, even trash. She'll hang on to newspapers, books, childhood toys.
All right, so this is the living room. There's actually furniture under here. Walking through is like an obstacle course. You can not even go a step without stepping on something.
What was this like growing up as a child?
Brings on an enormous amount of shame. I know something needs to be done.
My mom has done immense damage to me psychologically growing up. When I've tried to confront my mom with things from the past, she gets very explosive, very defensive, and you're left to feel like a horrible person.
What is your connection to the objects that you collect?
From the time I was little, I wasn't allowed to have possessions. Everything I did was wrong. Everything I did was resulted in some form of abuse. But the objects never rejected me. I wasn't allowed to own myself.
But you own these things,
Well,
which you weren't allowed to before,
correct.
but now you can.
Dr. Phil, this is not intentional.
I totally describe this home as catastrophic. I'm not comfortable having anybody in this house that is going to pass judgment, ridicule me. If I get something that I like, I don't want to get rid of it. I mean, what is your function? None. But I'm attached.
I do think you have a hoarding disorder, and everyone is different. I think for you, it's very anxiety-driven, and I think anxiety often occurs with depression, and I think it's trauma-induced. And if you had a way to alleviate that depression, if you had a new way to hit the reset button, you would do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
want to be
Yes.
free of that.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
What I propose to do is to intervene in that with you in a very intense way. Well, that happened, and Robin says that I was the catalyst who helped her face her hoarding issue head on. When she heard about Jackie's story, she wanted to share some of the things she learned, one mother to another.
I totally believe that Dr. Phil changed my life. Dr. Phil absolutely blew the lid off my hoarding. He faced me down with my daughter and we talked. There was a lot deeper issues going on that I needed to face. I guarantee you, there are a number of things going on in your life, Jackie, and none of them are by choice. So one of the most important things is to understand that you have to forgive yourself for being human. I know it's been difficult for me with 3 daughters that suffered as a result of what I was going through. So embrace your daughter, and she needs to understand Mother loves you. She didn't choose to be messed up. She wants help. I'll always be grateful to Dr. Phil for realizing how much help I needed on my journey, because nobody can do it alone. You can't just turn off a switch. Dr. Phil is a hero in my book. Thank you, Dr. Phil, from the bottom of my heart. I totally believe that Dr. Phil changed my life. Dr. Phil absolutely blew the lid off my hoarding. He faced me down with my daughter and we talked. Dr. Phil is a hero in my book.
Well, I was proud to work with Robin, and Tracy's going to join us now virtually. Tracy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for letting us follow up on this.
Tell me what you have to say about all of this.
I'm so proud of you guys for reaching out and getting the help. And I think this is one of those conditions that's really hard to reach out for help because it's so embarrassing. I had so much shame, and going on the show and showing my mom's house to the world when I was never willing to show it to a single friend even was huge. But I was so desperate for help, just like you guys are right now. And it's like, it just out of desperation, I was willing to do it, which is, I'm sure, why you are now. But I want to encourage you that it actually helped my shame to reveal it, to show it, to rip the Band-Aid off this way. And I feel like people's reaction to it now was more about looking at it with compassion rather than disgust, which was awesome. And I no longer have to worry about keeping the secret. The light shined on it. It's so much better. You're going to feel so much better.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. And, the thing is, life is managed, not cured. And as your mom said, you don't just flip a switch. You start digging out of this, but you do it with help. And it's a process. And we're going to start that process right now today. And it's so great to get that burden off of you. So that's what we're going to do. So Tracy, thank you so much for your message of hope.
Thank you.
This lifestyle that you've been living has been a horrific problem for you, and it's been a barrier between you and your daughter, Shayla. And you do need some help. And I've arranged for you to have that help.
Thank you.
But it's important that you be in control, okay? So I don't want to do this to you. I want to do this with you and for you. But you have to be willing to say, I'm going to clean this sucker up. I'm going to empty this out. And when the generous folks at Address Our Mess got our call about Jackie's story, they immediately wanted to help. When Jackie gets home, their professional team of discreet, compassionate, non-judgmental cleaners will work alongside Jackie to start this dig out, okay? They'll work with you, okay? So you don't feel overwhelmed. You obviously need professional help with this history that you have. And so I'm going to arrange for you to have some help through Doctor On Demand, which is a company that we own, and will provide teletherapy for you. And I'm going to set up 10 sessions for you immediately. So we're going to get you the professional help. We're going to get the house cleaned out. We're going to do all of this stuff so you get to hit the reset button and have a fresh start. Ever since her daughter went off to college, she has become an empty Mess-Ter.
And turned her entire home into a house of hoarding.
That's the floor. This is my little path to my bed.
Full of mice, unhygienic. No one could or should be living there.
New Dr. Phil. Check your local listings.